I think we're just right about time.
Mhm.
Welcome and good evening. I'm Patrick Tellin, the Chief Advancement Officer for University School of Milwaukee. And once again, welcome to our USM Legacy Workshop, Anticipating Your Legacy. This is a part one of a three-part series of gift planning workshops for our donors of University School of Milwaukee. Now, at USM, this is the year of celebrating our culture of generosity, and we're doing this in a very virtual way this year. So I appreciate, and we all appreciate you being here to join us in this wonderful evening tonight. On behalf of my colleagues in the Advancement Office, we're so grateful for you. And as a way of saying thank you, we've invited you to tonight's virtual gathering to learn about meaningful ways in which you can support USM and other charities you value with the help of our gift planning specialist, Christy Boysen, who's with us tonight. She'll be taking us through these series, these three series. But let me introduce Christy to you. So please help me welcome her. And Christy brings a great business sense with her, an engaging personality, you'll find out soon here. And she's got professional degrees, a BA in psychology, a BA in communications, of course, and a master's in higher education. Her real forte these days is her gift planning services that she provides for us at University School of Milwaukee. She's made a great career out of it so far, and I'm sure it will continue that way. She's brought a donor-centered approach to this delicate discussion and has helped dozens of families establish multi-million-dollar charitable state gifts to the organizations that they love. And when she's not doing this kind of work, she's usually out walking, right? Or taking care of her new home, putting on some finishing touches for her new home. So let's sit back and take out your notepad and pencil or pen and let's hear what Christy has to say. Again, we're grateful that you're here in support of USM and wonderful charities around the world. Please feel free to ask any questions or ask any thoughts you may have as it relates to the topic tonight. And before we get going, I just want to extend a special thank you to Maria Stone, our Director of Development at University School of Milwaukee, for helping to pull everything together for tonight. All those wonderful emails you've seen out there, that's from Maria Stone helping us in the Advancement Office. So thank you so much. Christy, take it away, and we appreciate you being here.
Thank you so much, Patrick. Always a pleasure to be with you and USM family. So I'm glad that we can do this tonight. Well, Patrick did a really great job introducing who I am, but I'm going to speak just a little bit more about what I do at my organization and how I work with families. So at the core of the work that we do, we serve donors. We help donors think about their legacy, think about who they want to give to, what their values are, what their mission has been in life, and incorporate all of that into a great plan for themselves and for their family. And so tonight we're going to spend time talking a little bit more philosophical about the big picture. So the focus is on anticipating your legacy. And I chose the word anticipating intentionally because it's about evaluating, it's about knowing that at some point you're not going to be here. And how do you live differently, perhaps today, and also set things up in such a way that you're not just leaving behind assets, but you're leaving behind a legacy. We're also going to talk about preparing the next generation in the session we're doing on January 28th. So take note of that. And our third session is in March, and that's where we get into the nitty-gritty details of estate planning tools, charitable vehicles. So that's kind of where the rubber meets the road, and we'll go deep. And that, like I said, is on March 11th. So I want to start with the concept of a patron legacy. So let me define patron for you. So patron is someone who intentionally supports another, often through their finances. And the word legacy means essentially what remains after that person has left and moved on. So when you combine them and you think about or try to create or be a patron legacy, what that means is it's the life of a generous person who impacts others and changes the world for good. And I'm here because Patrick invited you and Maria invited you, because this is something that seems to align with who you are and the mission that you've created here on Earth. And so goal is to dig deep and to help you think about that and create that for yourself. So let's start with an estate plan. Now that's something that's really common language. We know that it's something that goes into effect when we pass away. And the objective of this plan is to efficiently transfer assets to another individual from yourself. And it often has a goal of being tax efficient and maximize financial inheritance. Things that this includes would typically be a last will and testament, healthcare directives, power of attorney, trust documents, maybe restrictive protections to provide in a unique way for a spouse or a child or another loved one. And it can include testamentary charitable vehicles. So these are the legally binding documents that are required to pass on an estate in a more easy format and to set things up well for a family. When I talk about legacy, I'm talking about something that includes this, but is so much more. And so this slide walks through kind of what it means to create or consider a legacy plan. So it starts with an opportunity to preview the plan that you have in place. It's a glimpse into your future story. Now, if you are one of the unique ones in America, one of the 30% of Americans, you might have a plan. What we know is that about half of those people know what that plan is. So 15% maybe already have a good understanding. Everyone else either has something that they don't really know or aren't very familiar with, or don't have a plan at all. So part of planning your legacy is to preview what you've put in place or what you haven't, to identify what that future story might be. And then it's a thoughtful engagement. It's not just about the legal documents. It becomes or can become an active statement of the life that you're living and the impact that you want to have long term. I ask a lot of questions. You're going to find that out here. And then at the end, it's a communication of your values to your family and ultimately that legal transfer of assets. But it's bigger picture. It's about values, it's about family, it's about others, and it's about resources. And we're going to dig into this a little bit tonight together. Let's start with values. Now, this is one of my favorite spaces to spend time with families in. Values defines your why. And everyone's why is a little bit different. Now, there are some consistencies. I often hear that someone's why for setting up a plan is to protect the family. Sometimes I hear that the why is just a drive for success, to gain more and more and more. And that's a key value. Another value might be to celebrate values, to celebrate things that are really meaningful. Values might mean helping with a worthy cause. And some people just don't know. They're not sure what their values are. So as a part of legacy planning, something that I often ask families is how they want to be remembered. Like I said, an estate plan can simply be legal documents that are executed eventually, someday, one day, well into the future. But those documents often miss the heart behind that person that's created them, the purpose, the stories, the meaning behind the lives that they've lived. And so I believe that it's critical to take a step back and to determine what one's values are. It's the question of why that really defines the work that we do, and I believe it defines the lives that we live. And sometimes it feels daunting or complicated to think through. And creating an estate plan is not something that most people run toward. It's often something that's avoided. So in thinking about values, it can help soften that experience of planning this, because all of a sudden it's values driven. It's about who you are, the life you've lived, the family you've created, the job you've held, and maybe the ways you've given generously. And it's understanding all of that and then putting together a plan that really aligns with those values. So my encouragement to you today is to start thinking about, what is your why? Do you like your why? And maybe this process makes you question what your why is. And that's okay. but maybe you love that why. And you want to then create something that really, really helps you say or tell that story in your final moments here on earth. So one quote that I want to share, and this is actually from a USM family, and this is in reflecting back on some of our conversations. So this is what she said. She said, when thinking about our legacy, we had to think, what do we stand for? What have we spent our lives trying to do for the world? And as we sat there thinking about it, it became so crystal clear. And what's been so neat about working with this family is they've been able to define their why, and that is so visible in the plan they've put in place, both for their children in creating a plan that's thoughtful, a plan that really pulls everything together in a way that should be much easier for the kids. But it also incorporates scholarship funds. It incorporates giving back to the community. And these aren't things that they had in their plan before. And it wasn't until we paused, we looked at their assets and said, hey, you can actually do some pretty cool things here. And the values, the why, is what then helped drive what they chose to do. So the next thing I want to talk about with you is family. That's often another big part of this process of legacy planning. Now, family is who you impact. Might be your spouse, children, parents, siblings, extended family members, and family can be beyond that too. And family absolutely matters. The first thing that folks tell me when I sit down with them and they say, this is what I want to do, it always includes leaving as much as possible to their heirs. And I want to make very clear, leaving an inheritance to family is really important. And often it aligns with the values that a family might have. But something that I do want to encourage families to think about as we're working on their plan is, what are the other values, the other who's that are out there that might also benefit from part of the legacy. And that sometimes means friends. My husband and I don't have children, and we've got great extensive family, but we also have chosen to remember some of our friends because our community has created who we are today. And so that's something we've incorporated. That's not something everyone does, but it wasn't until we really started thinking about who we are, who our family is, who our connections are, that we decided to incorporate something like that. Something that I often encourage families to think about when they're considering their legacy is how to honor their family. You know, sometimes that is providing for loved ones, and sometimes it's actually protecting assets. An 18-year-old receiving a big inheritance might seem really neat, but usually that inheritance disappears pretty quick. And so there are tools that you can utilize to help mitigate that, to set them up well, to maybe receive something at 18, but again, 5 years later and 5 years later. I often, when I think about protecting assets, protecting family, sometimes that means you've got a special needs child and they need a unique trust so that they're protected from the government taking their inheritance. That's something that not everyone thinks about. Another way to honor family is to give them peace of mind knowing the plan. And this is often left behind. Folks don't want to talk about it. Kids don't want to hear about it. And yet, understanding and knowing what the plan is helps bring peace of mind, helps your heirs understand what's going on, so that they can execute it in a way that really honors you as well. Another way is to reduce, of course, their potential taxes and costs. Not everyone has a taxable estate. Right now, the threshold is quite high in the $11 million range, double that if you're married. But in 2026, that's going to drop. It's slotted to drop back to the $5 million range per person. So still pretty high. Not everyone fits within that. Yet there are still some taxes that are at play. And so it's important, or it can be helpful in the process of thinking about legacy, to think about the nuts and bolts. What assets do you have? If you have retirement assets that are pre-tax dollars like 401ks, 403bs, IRAs, those are still going to be taxed. And if that's taken in a lump sum, which most children do, it's taxed at a pretty high rate. So something worth considering when you're giving to your children. And there's some good tools that are out there to help with that. Another way to honor family is to mitigate future disagreements. And by thinking about family as a part of your legacy, oftentimes you can help quiet those disagreements, have conversations up front, have a family meeting and talk about who's inheriting what, why you've selected certain people in specific roles. You know, I lived in California when my folks put their plan together, updated it, and they knew that it would be really hard for me to serve in any role from California. They're in Wisconsin. And so I'm not in any role in their plan. I'm the oldest. I do this for a living, a little ironic, but it made a lot of sense. I get it. I'm not hurt. If they hadn't told me about that, that might be hurtful. So again, a way to honor family sometimes is communicating, even if it's hard. And the last thing I'll note is instilling your values with your family. And there's a tool I love integrating into estate plans, and that is a donor advised fund. Most of the time we think about that as a tool that only the wealthy utilize, or something that you only do during life. And what I've found is a lot of families want to teach generosity to their children, to their grandchildren, to their loved ones. And you can set up testamentary donor advised funds that allow your loved ones to give in honor of you. It encourages generosity. And so another really neat tool that's out there. I want to share a story with you. Like I said, every family that I work with wants to leave a significant portion of their estate to their children. I have another family that, you know, their children are all in different stages, have different financial circumstances. And so they've had to think through, what does it mean to give equally versus give because of who they are and what their needs are. So their estate plan is a little different. It's not split equally. And that's okay. That works for them. Again, communication is key. Talking about that so there aren't hard feelings is helpful. But something else that was really important to this couple was that they give to their grandchildren as well. And so they are integrating a couple charitable vehicles to help their grandchildren receive a small incremental amount of money each year. A tool for that is the Charitable Remainder Unit Trust that can do this for grandchildren or children. And it also then allows a large gift to go to charity at the end, that they're letting their grandchildren help influence where it goes. Now that is a neat way to love that generation. And of course, I've encouraged them to talk with their grandchildren to explain why they're doing this, how they hope they use that annual little gift, and what they hope they choose to do with the charitable gifts. Great teaching tool, but without thoughtfully engaging in legacy, these are things that often don't happen, not because you don't care, but because it's not top of mind. And so my encouragement to you as you're thinking about giving to your family is think through some of these pieces. It's worth it. It's definitely worth it. All right, let's talk about others. So others can mean all sorts of things. It can mean causes or issues you're passionate about. It can mean charities that you've supported or you've always wanted to support. It can mean friends or neighbors, as I mentioned. And it can be strangers. There's a country song that talks about someone who received an inheritance from a stranger. If you're not into country music, that's okay. But there is one out there for that. So others is something that most people don't think about. It's how can I leave a legacy in the lives of these people or with these organizations that are impacting lives in these ways. I'd love to share a story with you about a nonprofit that I'm serving, and this nonprofit is a camp, and this camp was founded by one couple that had a really big vision for the camp, and 50 plus years later, they're still in existence and thriving. And just a couple years ago, a woman passed away. She didn't have any children and knew that this camp had impacted her life a lot. And so she chose to give half of her estate to this camp so that they can continue impacting lives in the ways that they that meant so much to her. And this camp had no idea that this gift was coming their way, and it was really substantial. One of the ways that they then decided to use this gift was to pay it forward and to help other families think about legacy, not so that they could get something back, but so that these families could consider their plan, consider what plan they didn't have, think big picture about what they want to do. And what's so neat about this is it's creating legacy after legacy after legacy. She had no idea the impact that she was going to make. So my question for you is, what would it look like for you to consider your legacy in light of those beyond your family? How can you love and impact and bring forth change in a way that honors other things that you're passionate about? And if it's USM, you're here, clearly you're passionate about USM, great. And if it's not, that's okay too. Our goal, my goal, I think Patrick's goal is that you create something that aligns with who you are and what you want that legacy and story to be. So last one I'll touch on here is resources. So when I talk about resources as a part of legacy planning, sometimes people think that I'm crazy, and that's okay. Resources is about the things that you currently have: labor, influence, finances, expertise. And I bring this up because as you go through planning thoughtfully, it changes you and it helps you move differently, engage differently, use the knowledge that you have differently. I know that a lot of families that choose to remember a nonprofit in their plan, well, they're more invested in that nonprofit now because they're leaving or plan to leave a substantial gift. Well, when that happens, they're able to bring forth their resources today to make a greater impact that eventually they're going to leave a financial impact for. And so I very much encourage you to think about what do you have to offer and how can you begin creating that legacy today? One other piece that I think is included in resources is how do you honor the things that you have, the stories that you have cultivated throughout your life? My husband, his dad passed away when he was 25 and devastated him, came on suddenly, and he, in those last moments, did everything he could to capture all the stories that his dad had. And he has some recordings still that we occasionally get to listen to. But what he also learned through that is those stories do disappear when someone passes away. And so he intentionally, over the 10 years after that, while his mom was still living, sat down with her and went through different things in their home, in his childhood home. And he took pictures and took notes and did everything that he could to capture the meaning and the story behind what things meant, who was in what pictures. His mom had a huge glass collection. So what pieces of glass had meaning? Which ones had come over from Europe? And which ones did she find at a thrift store? And all of that he documented because he knew that at some point he wouldn't be able to get those stories in the same way. And so my encouragement to you as you're thinking about legacy is how do you capture those stories? How do you tell your loved ones that you love them and encourage them and share your hopes and dreams for them? I encourage families to write legacy letters. I encourage them to note important items, whether that's sharing the story verbally, or I have one couple I worked with that put together a whole booklet with pictures and the meaning and a whole host of things. And another gal that I'm connecting with who is working on writing her memoir in multiple different books from different stages of life. There are so many different ways to capture story, but it does cause or require pausing. And so my hope is that in listening to this, you're thinking of things in your own home. You're thinking of stories that are significant. And maybe, especially as we're stuck inside with COVID in the ways that I think we are going to be this winter, maybe this winter is a time to pull out a notepad and write some stories down, or to take pictures and share those stories with distant relatives. Honor the things that you have, honor the stories that you have, and share that with your loved ones, because I can guarantee you one day they're going to want that. So we've covered a lot of ground. We've talked about values, we've talked about family, we've talked about story and resources, and of course we've talked about the other. My question for you is, are you willing to take time to ask some of these questions, to consider who it is you want to impact, what you want to impact? There are so many ways to give. And my second question or encouragement is, how might you begin creating that legacy now? What are the things that you can invest in financially, with other resources, with your knowledge? How can you begin investing now so that that legacy that you one day will leave, we all will leave one, that legacy is something even more engaging and thoughtful and more you than perhaps what it is today. So next steps from this session is, there's a number of them. I like giving options. So one, of course, is to connect with me or connect with Patrick and Maria. My goal, I'm here to provide support, to help you think about giving, to think about your family, to think about your legacy. And so if anything we've talked about here strikes a chord, I'd love to sit down with you and talk through how we might make that chord something more significant. We've got a couple upcoming seminars, like I mentioned. One, of course, is on bringing up the next generation. Now, I love that in the context of USM, because that is what USM does every single day, is they are bringing up, educating, growing, teaching the future leaders of this world. And so we're going to spend some time talking about intentionally raising up that next generation to be incredible, to be generous, and to know how to handle whatever it is that you're leaving behind. And then on the 11th, like I mentioned at the beginning, we are going to go deep and talk about a lot of different estate planning tools, how to use them, when to use them. We'll talk a bit about roles and who's good, maybe well equipped to serve in specific roles, and perhaps those that may not be as well equipped. So save those dates. And of course, Patrick and Maria are going to send those out in a follow-up email as well. So we'd love to see you there. There's a book that I just love encouraging people to read, and it's called The Little Book of Gratitude. And it's an endearing story that teaches easy techniques to foster gratitude every day. And we're in a year of generosity at my company. It's all about gratitude this year. And this book comes to mind. And I know that's something that, of course, USM lives and breathes every day, is a place of gratitude and a heart of gratitude. Two things that I'd encourage you to do in your free time: start conversations. Talk with your spouse or loved ones about what it is that you want to do, hope to do, what your vision is for the future. And in doing so, that might spur on some different choices or some conversations you never anticipated. And then revisit our questions. And I've got a slide next with some questions for you to think about and consider what your legacy can be today and what your legacy can be in the future. So a couple questions to consider. First, who do you want to impact with your legacy? And next, what assets are in your estate? And is there going to be a difference from today to the future? Most estates are in the growing stage. Even those that are in retirement are often still growing their estates. And so what is possible might be even more possible in the future. So think about your impact, think about the assets you have to play with and be generous with, and what professionals do you currently work with? One way that I sometimes will describe my role is that I sit in the middle of a Venn diagram of really great with a family. So I sit right there in the middle with a whole host of resources around. But most of those resources don't talk. Most financial advisors don't talk to the attorney. And the attorney doesn't always talk to your favorite nonprofits or even know that you support a nonprofit. They all might not talk to your accountant or insurance agent. They probably aren't talking to your children. And so what I get to do is sit right in the middle of that. And we get to look at all the different tools, all the different resources that you have, and educate and help you create a plan that's going to serve and work with everyone else. And I have no skin in the game. I'm here just as a resource. So I've got nothing to lose. You've got nothing to lose in meeting with me. So I encourage you to think about those questions. I encourage you to reach out, to connect with me. And it might be a one-time meeting, and that's okay. And it might be a whole process, and that's also okay. Couple things, especially for those of you that are traveling around the holidays, I do encourage you to kind of pull some documents together. That at the very least, even if you don't have a great plan in place yet, or you know you want to make some changes, that's going to help make things easier if that worst case scenario happens. So pull together whatever documents you do have. If you don't have those, write some ideas down. It's not going to be legally binding, but at least it's something that you can leave your loved ones. Pull together information on retirement accounts, life insurance policies, beneficiary designations. Why does that matter? Because it is a beast to close an estate. So if you can pull that together and help your loved one that's going to eventually close it, manage all of that, it's definitely worth it and a good gift. Maybe that's your Christmas gift this year. Tell your kids, I pulled everything together for you, and maybe they'd appreciate it. Maybe they won't. Passwords, login information, account information, those are things that are oftentimes overlooked or change frequently. I was just talking with someone the other day. They have on their calendar when they file taxes, they update their list of passwords. So typically they're relatively up to date for the list and eventually for the loved ones when that day comes. And take a snapshot of your assets if you want. That's going to give you a good picture of what you have to work with. What do I do? What do I offer? I offer motivation, I offer education, and I offer facilitation. So my goal is to serve you, to understand who you are, what you want to do, and then to help make that happen. If you are curious about my process in working with folks, and again, this looks different from person to person because everyone's needs are different. First step is get to know me. Often that's through a seminar and then some meetings. And in those meetings, we'll talk about what your hopes and dreams are. We'll talk about your assets. We'll talk about your kids. We'll talk about the things you don't always want to talk about. And then we'll come up with a plan that's customized, that fits you, meets your needs, and encourages good conversation. And then hopefully you find comfort in knowing that you've got a good plan that speaks about your legacy and the impact that you're currently making and the one that you're going to leave one day. That is it for tonight. I hope that was thought-provoking and engaging and stirred up some good questions for you. Thank you so much for joining. Patrick, do you want to ask any follow-up questions or share anything else?
Christy, I just wanted to say thank you so much for your time tonight. You've done a wonderful job. I think the point too about not everyone thinks about a gift plan in their future or near future is important to note. And we know that too at University School of Milwaukee in our advancement operation. We understand that, and we also want to be sure that in this year of gratitude and certainly the season of Thanksgiving, we want to give back to you, our donors, this service to be used by you and your families to come to that place where you realize this ultimate thought and leaving your legacy to not only University School of Milwaukee, but to all the nonprofits you support. So thank you so much for being with us tonight. And Christy, great job. And we look forward to parts 2 and 3 coming up in January and March of 2021. And again, folks, if you have any questions or thoughts or want to get back to Christy, myself, or Maria Stone, our Director of Development, please feel free to email us. And we'll be certainly following up with you too as well. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much. Have a wonderful night. Bye.
I know.